The Isle of Man TT Fortnight kicked off this week, a 37-mile road race that knows no equal. Unfortunately, the weather hasn't really been playing ball during practice, which is putting riders and teams under further pressure and really affecting the lineup and what we're going to expect from the next week to come. Joining me to discuss what this means for this year's epic rider lineup is Autosport's motorcycle racing correspondent, Lois Dunkin. Lois, you wouldn't really want to be a TT organiser right now, would you?
No, it's been a hard week for the organisers. We've had just 2 days of practice where by now we should be gearing up for racing. The real problem point is the mountain, mist on the mountain. If there's mist on the mountain, the helicopter can't fly, so we can't have any medical helicopters flying. And it is what it is. It's one of those things. We don't race in the wet anymore. We're used to it. It's too dangerous, and you can understand why the organisers have had to cancel these sessions. It's not great for the riders, it's not great for the fans or the sponsors or anything like that, but safety is paramount.
I suppose less time on the bike is going to be more of a problem with those riders who are on new machinery. So attention's got to turn to the fastest road racer in the world right now, Peter Hickman. You know, he's still with Smith's BMW for the third year to run, so there is some consistency there from a team perspective, but he is on an all-new BMW S1000RR. How is that going to affect his TT race? Well,
he admitted to me at the TT launch that he was always coming into this year on the back foot because the bike was so new. To add to that, they've had problems in testing. The Smiths team and the Tyco BMW team as well took late delivery of the bike, so they missed pretty much all of the British Superbike testing that happened in the pre-season, which of course Hickman races in full time. So they had little track time before the season. Hickman's obviously had a bit of track time in BSB and he's been going well. But the first real opportunity for them was the Northwest 200 to get the bike dialed in on the roads. It went well for Hickman actually at the Northwest 200. He hadn't seen the Superstock bike until he jumped on it in Tuesday practice, put it on pole, went and won the race. So he's coming into the TT at least knowing that the bike's capable, but he missed the opening night because of his BSB commitments at Donington Park, and he didn't get any laps on the Superbike. He had a mechanical issue in that practice session on the Tuesday, and he only got one lap in on the Superstock bike. So not ideal preparations, but it seems already that S1000RR is in a good place in stock trim. Remains to be seen where it lies in Superbike trim, especially compared to the Kawasaki, the new Kawasaki. The lack of track time, no, I mean, you need miles at the Isle of Man TT, you need track time, and he's just not got that so far. He was quickest in the Supersport session, but you know, he wants time on the big bike. He needs to get that dialed in.
Last year, Hickman, he claimed victories in the Superstock, and then he pulled this 135-mile-an-hour lap out the bag, didn't he, in the senior, to claim the senior TT by the narrowest of margins from Dean Harrison. Surely now, this year, Dean Harrison can go one step further.
You'd like to think so. I mean, this new ZX-10R, it's not a massive step forward from last year's bike, but there's a bit more power from the engine. It's got titanium conrods now, so it's a bit lighter. It makes the bike a bit more agile, which is quite useful around some of the sections in the Isle of Man. He's hungry for the big bike success. He's had 2 wins at the Isle of Man already. Won last year in the Super Sport class, as you say, just narrowly beaten to the big bike win in the senior last year by Hickman. He's upped his game outside of road racing. Beforehand, he was always just pure road racer. Since 2017, he had a bit of a dabble in British Superbikes. Continued that last year. Now this year, he's putting in a full campaign in BSB, and he's running quite well. He's generally fighting for those sort of 15th to sort of 10th place points finishes. So he's upped his game. He also admitted during the TT launch that he was going to the gym now. So he's taking this seriously, and it just shows you how much, you know, that defeat to Hickman, I think, has at the senior TT has forced him to raise his game. And he's had the best practice week so far, and with all the disruptions, with Hickman not having the greatest of practice weeks with some of his other rivals unknown quantities right now, Harrison goes into race week as the favourite for me.
What you say there about both Harrison and Hickman, in the sense that they are both riding in British Superbikes, doesn't feel like a coincidence to me, that really. You know, they are well in the lead in terms of setting the pace. So do you think there's something in the riding style from circuit racing that those two lads are applying into certain sections of the TT course?
The mountain section seems to be where the short circuit racers tend to flourish. If you look at sort of the times from last year, that was where Hickman had his advantage. It was on the mountain section where Hickman really took that win. I think he came into that part of the course 2 or 3 seconds down on Harrison on the final lap, and he emerged from it 0.8 seconds ahead. So that's where the short circuit thing, riding style anyway, comes into it. But it's more about bike time, bike fitness. If you're racing, there's been 3 British Superbike rounds so far, so if you're racing through those 3 rounds and then going to the northwest and into the TT in such a short space of time, you're bike fit. It's not a new thing, short circuit racers coming to the TT. I mean, Carl Fogarty did it, Steve Hislop, all those guys, but there seems to be more of an emphasis on it now, purely because of that bike fitness, and Hickman's shown that, Harrison's shown that, the others now are having a look at that. I mean, Hilliard's had a couple of BSB outings this year just to get the bike dialed in. Michael Dunlop was supposed to, but he had some problems getting the bike sorted, and he had a small injury as well during a test. So, it's forcing these guys to raise their game and maybe go through short circuits. Now, Ian Hutchinson said something interesting to me where he said at the TT launch that the days are gone now where you can just go to a couple of road races in Northern Ireland at the Cookstown or whatever and then turn up to the TT and expect to be quick. You've got to have miles under your belt now, whether that's on British Championship, whether it's somewhere else. You need to have that bike time.
Such different riders you're just discussing. I mean, it's just lovely to see Harrison there, back end just coming out of that corner. It's incredible. Another really aggressive rider is Michael Dunlop. He almost looks like a stunt rider sometimes. He had a great TT last year, 3 victories on, so he's got 18 TT victories in total now. But he didn't have the greatest back end of the years, and he's kind of coming into this as a bit of an underdog. But you should never underestimate him, right? You
can never underestimate Michael Dunlop. But yeah, as you mentioned, it was after the TT where he won 3 races. He won the Joey Dunlop Trophy, so the championship effectively for the TT. A couple of weeks after the TT, his brother William Dunlop tragically died during the Skerries 100 races, and Michael walked away from the sport. Till then, we weren't sure what he was going to do this year. He renewed his partnership with Tyco BMW. As I mentioned, problems getting the bike delivered and set up, and obviously Tyco have their own British Superbike commitments to focus on, so time's been against them. The Northwest, over a single lap, Michael was quick, and of course he got a podium in the Superstock race on the Thursday, but it did look like he was rusty. He wasn't quite the same Michael Dunlop we've seen, and he's had an okay practice week so far. He was set to set the best lap in the Superbike class before he backed off over the mountain. So we haven't quite seen what he's capable of yet, but he is a bit of an unknown, just where his head's at, where that lack of bike time relative to all these other rivals. Because you remember after the TT, a lot of them have had British Superbikes. They've gone to the Ulster Grand Prix, they've gone to the Macau Grand Prix, they've had the Classic TT as well. Okay, Classic TT is not the same sort of spec of bikes, but it's bike time. So it'll be interesting to see where Michael ends up as we start race week.
Yeah, I hope so. It'd be great to see him back on that podium, wouldn't it? On to royalty now, racing royalty, King Jon of McGinnis. I mean, what a man. Back to fitness, thank God. He's come back from injury. He's with a new team, a lot to prove, and there's probably few riders out there that know the island as well as him, but it's got to be a bit of an uphill struggle with Norton.
I think it's more the uphill struggle is with him. Personally, he missed last year's TT. He was due to race, but he re-broke that leg that he broke horribly in a crash at the Northwest 200 when he was with Honda.
It wasn't his fault.
It wasn't his fault. It was a technical issue, and it vaulted him over a fence at 100 miles per hour or whatever it was. So it wasn't a great time for McGinnis. He fought through that. He did some laps on Norton last year in the TT, and he wasn't hanging about by.
No, that was supposed to be a parade lap, wasn't it? He wasn't averaging 120 miles an hour.
Something like that, yeah. He wasn't hanging about. And then he went to the Classic TT. That was his racing return, and he won the senior race on the Patton. Went to Macau, finished 10th on the Paul Bird Ducati, which is not a bad result at Macau, given the nature of the circuit and just how little time he'd had on the bike since then. Comes into this year, the Norton's a proven package now. I mean, Josh Brooks and David Johnson over the last few years have brought that bike forward. I mean, Josh Brooks, I think he had a top 6 finish last year on the bike in one of the Superbike races, or in both of the Superbike races, so it's a good package. McGinnis, low-key Northwest 200. He had an 11th place finish in the Superbike race, the only Superbike race of that meeting because of the weather. Was kind of off the pace during practice, as you'd imagine, the first time spinning laps in anger on the bike. So we're not quite sure where Jon is at the moment. Is he going to win races this year? It's doubtful. You know, he's aiming for podiums. I think that's going to be a stretch, but you know, he looked okay in the Supersport bike on Tuesday night, albeit a lot of guys didn't run in that class. He was fourth fastest, but maybe the smaller bikes, for a change, might be where McGinnis' best hopes are this year.
Because Norton are also running the lightweight, and then, as you say, in the Supersport category, he's back with Padgett's. And then probably maybe his best chance of success then is, would you say, with the TT0?
Yeah, TT0 has been where McGinnis has been quite strong when he was racing over the past few years. Michael Rutter's kind of taken that mantle over on the Mugen. I think Rutter will be quite hard to beat, quite honestly. It's a bike he seems to like, and Rutter's come into a real rich vein of form over the past couple of years. You know, he's been strong on the Bathan's BMW. He's got the RCV MotoGP replica in the Superbike class. He's quick on the lightweight bikes as well, so I think Russell will be hard for McGinnis to beat, but you know, a 24th win could come in the zero class. I still think it's going to be difficult for him, just purely from a physical point of view. Just he's not had that much time on the bike. So,
but what is amazing is that both of those lads are 47 years of age, and it's almost proof that age and experience count for a lot on this island.
Absolutely. I mean, this is Michael Rutter's 30th year racing. It's his 25th year at the TT. You know, he's been going so long, and he's still competitive, and he still does short circuit stuff from time to time. He's a proper racer, is Michael Rutter, and as you say, experience counts for a lot around the island, because there's so many variables that can attack you in the Isle of Man. It's not like short circuit racing. You know, you've got reliability, there's, you know, fatigue sets in, you've got all sorts of things that can you know, see you come undone, and the experience really does come into play there, and that's where Rutter and McGinnis, you know, are cut above the rest.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to seeing that comeback of Jon. Another comeback, we've got to discuss Hutchie.
Yeah.
You know, he's with Team Honda now, really good backing. The team's not had the best of years, really, but does he look in a better place?
He's looking in a better place than last year. Last year he was just going through the motions. He had to come back and just make sure he was putting miles on his leg. He looks a bit better this year. He was okay at the Northwest. He didn't really race any of the races on the Saturday because of the weather. The Honda's not really... The new Honda, the Fireblade that came out in 2017, hasn't really proven itself on the roads yet. Connor Cummins had the podium last year on it, and in Padgett's colours. It's yet to have the success that previous Fireblades have had. Hutchinson feels he's the man to do that. Low-key practice week, he had a crash on Tuesday, which he walked away from, luckily. So it remains to be seen where Hutchinson is, but he's looking in a lot better shape than he was last year. And if anyone's going to take that Honda to success, it's going to be him.
Right, I'm going to put you on the spot now for predictions. Who do you reckon is going to walk away with the senior this year?
I think Harrison. You know, he's
man.
It's got to be him. I mean, he's looking quick. He's had the most amount of track time as anyone. The ZX-10R is a great bike right now. You know, he's riding as better than he ever has. I think he's going to make up for the loss of last year.
Okay, good stuff. Well, if you want to find out if Lewis is right, you've got to make sure you stay tuned to all the latest TT reports from Autosport and motorsport.com.